released today, a classified Senate investigation, now declassified, into the treatment of detainees. The report's timeline shows that Pentagon and CIA officers started training to conduct these interrogations 8 months before authorized by the Justice Department under President Bush. Michigan Democratic Senator Carl Levin chairs the Armed Services Committee and joins us now. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And let me ask you about your report. We've known a lot in various reports from the International Red Cross and from various books that have been written, but what is the importance, the significance of this report of yours, your weighty report and its conclusions about just what went on and who was responsible, especially with the prisoner interrogations going all the way back to Abu Ghraib?
What this report is a bipartisan Senate committee, Armed Services Committee report, which is lengthy, over 200 pages and 1,000+ footnotes. Took a year and a half to compile, which shows that while the Defense Department leaders in the Bush administration were trying, and the Deputy Defense Secretary himself was trying to persuade the American public that what they saw at Abu Ghraib in terms of abuses of detainees was the result of the actions of a few bad apples, that in fact this resulted from decisions made by high-level officials in the Bush administration, and this report tracks those decisions right from Washington to Guantanamo to Afghanistan to Iraq.
So Abu Ghraib was not an outlier. The whole conclusion of the administration had been to condemn that, but not to make the link between that and Guantanamo. You're making that connection in this investigation. Indeed,
we're making the link, though, to the policy decisions and the legal opinions that were written right here in Washington. These decisions to use these aggressive techniques, these coercive techniques, these decisions were made in Washington. The lawyers who wrote the opinions were here in Washington, and the squelching of dissent that took place here in Washington. There were very strong warnings against the use of these techniques, and those warnings were, in one case, they attempted to destroy the warning, as we just heard in your report, but we also, in our report, talk about the way the lawyer for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was right, her name is Jane Dalton, was right in the middle of making a legal assessment of the request for authority to use coercive techniques. She was in the middle of that review when she got word from the chairman that the attorney for the Secretary of Defense, Mr. Haynes, wanted that assessment to stop. They had to stop it right in the middle.
Well, so there you've got the civilian leadership cutting off military, professional military efforts to go through the legal examinations. John McCain, Lindsey Graham, some of your Republican colleagues who have endorsed the report have just issued a letter that they've written to President Obama saying that the lawyers should not be prosecuted. This after President Obama reversed himself in the last 24 hours on that subject. Do you think these lawyers should be open to possible prosecution?
I think the decision relative to prosecution and any action to be taken against lawyers professionally in terms of ethics, those decisions should be made by independent folks. I have very strong feelings about these legal opinions. I think they were abominations. I think these policy decisions damage the security of this country severely, and more importantly, very high-level uniformed military people have spoken out against these abuses and tried to stop them. The military lawyers tried to stop this from happening, but it's better that the judgment here as to whether or not any prosecution should take place or any effort at accountability professionally should be made, I believe, by the Justice Department. They should select 1 or 2 or 3 people who have credibility, perhaps retired federal judges, to give recommendations relative to prosecution, and the Office of Professional Responsibility inside the Justice Department is the right place to make recommendations relative to any professional accountability. But there hasn't been any at the highest levels. They tried to pass this off to a few bad apples. That was the effort in the Bush administration. These decisions were made at the highest level, and I think that questions of accountability ought to be made independently. We should not judge that, prejudge it, or as far as I'm concerned, say who should or should not be prosecuted, but rather leave that up to the Justice Department.
I've got to ask you about your own colleagues, because you looked at that as well. There were leaders of the intelligence committees in the House and the Senate who were briefed and who went along with it. What do you conclude about that?
Well, I'd have to, of course, that document just came over here today, but basically these were classified materials, and I'm not exactly sure what flexibility they had. I'd have to review those materials, which apparently have come over here, but are not yet, I have not had a chance to read.
All right, Carl Levin, Chairman of the Armed Services Committee, thank you very much.
Thank you,
and now
Andrea.
we go to live coverage.